Have you ever been accused of something you didn't do, and found that the more you explained, the more guilty you looked? That's the trap. In a world obsessed with defending reputations, Machiavelli warned, "He who explains himself confesses weakness." Today, you'll learn why the powerful never defend themselves, and the subtle trick Machiavelli used to flip power instantly when under attack. In every room, in every argument, and in every power game, there's a silent law that rules perception: the one who defends loses. Let's begin with something brutally honest. The moment you start defending yourself, you admit something dangerous. You admit that someone else's opinion has power over you. Think about it. When someone throws an accusation, or even a small jab at your character, your instinct is to explain, to justify, to clear your name. But here's the Machiavellian truth. Explanation is confession, not a confession of guilt, but of weakness. Machiavelli understood that perception bends reality. People rarely care about truth. They care about signals. And your act of defending sends a loud signal. I need you to see me differently. The powerful never ask to be seen differently. They make you see what they want through silence, confidence, and control. So when you start explaining, you shift from being the authority to being the accused. From being the judge to being on trial. And the world, whether it's a court, a company meeting, or a casual conversation, loves to watch the accused squirm. It's human nature. People instinctively see the one who justifies as someone who's already cornered. Because only the guilty need to defend. Only the unsure need to prove. Now, here's where it gets deeper. You might think that by defending yourself, you're correcting false information. That you're setting the record straight. But Machiavelli would laugh at that. He would tell you truth has no power without control of perception. You can be right and still lose everything if you appear desperate to be believed. Imagine a ruler, a CEO, or even a friend accused of betrayal. The weak one rushes to explain, "No, that's not true. You misunderstood me." The strong one smiles and says nothing, or simply replies, "People talk." And that's it. One is seen as scrambling to stay afloat. The other remains untouchable, elevated above the noise. When you defend yourself, you step into a battlefield you didn't choose. The attacker has already chosen the frame, the accusation, the timing, and the tone. By engaging, you enter their territory, and on their territory they control the rules. Machiavelli warned against this centuries ago. He believed that once you respond to an attack on their terms, you've already lost half the war. Defense is a form of reaction, and reaction is the opposite of control. The powerful do not react, they act. They create reality. They decide when to speak, what to address, and what to ignore. By staying silent, by not defending, they force others to question their own motives, their own certainty. That's the beauty of silence. It infects the minds of others with doubt. Let's take a modern example. Picture a public figure facing a rumor. Two responses: one gives a long, emotional explanation on social media, paragraphs of self-defense, tears, explanations. The other says nothing. Days later, the silence becomes its own mystery. The crowd starts arguing with itself. Maybe it's not true. Maybe they don't care because they're innocent. Maybe they're too powerful to respond. In silence, interpretation works for you, not against you. That's Machiavellian control. You manipulate perception not by pushing truth, but by withholding it. You don't chase approval, you make others chase understanding. Now, think of your own life. At work, someone questions your decision. Instinct says explain, show your reasoning, justify your logic. But if you want to command authority, you resist. You pause. You look them in the eye and simply say, "That's the choice I made." Nothing more. That moment of calm confidence is power, because people respect certainty, not correctness. Machiavelli understood something cruel, but true about human psychology. The world reads emotion as evidence. The more emotional or eager your defense, the more guilty you appear, even if you're entirely innocent. Emotion tells people you're fighting to survive an image collapse. And once people sense desperation, they sense weakness. So the next time you feel that burning need to defend yourself, remember, it's not the words that will save your image, it's your composure. Every explanation erodes authority. Every justification hands control to the one who accused you. The less you say, the more they wonder. And that wondering, that silence filled with uncertainty becomes your throne. When you refuse to defend yourself, you're not ignoring the world. You're bending it. You're telling everyone, I answer to no one. And that message, that quiet defiance, is more powerful than any argument you could ever make. Because people fear what they cannot control. And they cannot control someone who doesn't flinch when questioned. The weak defend because they crave understanding. The powerful remain still because they command it. And that's the essence of the first Machiavellian principle of power. The moment you defend, you descend. The moment you explain, you kneel. But the moment you stay silent, you rise above the noise, untouchable, unreadable, and infinitely more dangerous. There's a truth that every manipulator of power has understood for centuries. Facts don't rule people, frames do. The world doesn't respond to what is true, it responds to what feels true. And whoever controls the frame, controls the perception, and ultimately, controls reality itself. When Machiavelli wrote The Prince, he wasn't giving moral advice. He was handing out a manual for survival in a world ruled by illusion. He knew that humans don't live by facts. They live by stories, by interpretations, by emotions. You can be completely right and still lose the war if you let someone else define the meaning of what's happening. That's why Machiavelli's real power move wasn't to argue. It was to reframe. To control the frame means to dictate what the discussion means, not what it contains. Because when people argue about facts, they play small. But when you control the frame, you decide what those facts even represent. You control context, and context is where power lives. Let's say someone calls you arrogant. Most people would defend themselves. I'm not arrogant. I just believe in myself. That's a reaction. And in that reaction, you've accepted the accuser's frame, that arrogance is bad, and that you must prove you are not it. But Machiavelli would twist it. He would say, confidence always looks like arrogance to the insecure. Instantly, the frame shifts. The critic is now the weak one, and you stand above them. You didn't defend. You redefined. You flipped the power. Machiavelli understood that the battle for perception is not fought in logic, it's fought in framing. It's not what is said about you. It's how you make it mean something else. When someone accuses you of being ruthless, you call it decisiveness. When they say you're manipulative, you call it strategic. When they say you're cold, you call it disciplined. Every word is a weapon that can be turned, redirected, and made to serve your story instead of theirs. This is what separates the powerful from the powerless. The ability to make others argue inside your reality. The powerless defend themselves within someone else's narrative. The powerful rewrite the narrative so the defense becomes irrelevant. Imagine a king accused of being a tyrant. If he says, I am not a tyrant, he plays the subject's game. But if he says, a kingdom without fear is a kingdom without order, he reframes tyranny as necessity. The crowd now debates not whether he is cruel, but whether cruelty is required for stability. That's the genius of Machiavelli. He knew that winning isn't about denying charges. It's about changing their meaning. In everyday life, this principle is just as sharp. Someone questions your leadership, your choices, or your motives. The instinct is to justify. But justification is submission. Control of the frame requires calm detachment and verbal precision. You don't explain, you redirect. You don't argue the details, you elevate the perspective. Here's how Machiavellian reframing looks in action. Imagine a workplace scenario. Your team misses a deadline, and your superior questions your competence. The defensive move would be to explain why it happened. The excuses, the reasons, the context. But the power move is to shift the frame. I take responsibility for pushing this team to aim higher than the schedule allowed. Suddenly, the mistake becomes ambition. You've transformed weakness into authority. The same fact but under a different light, and now the frame serves you. People are emotional creatures, and emotions always attach to meaning, not detail. This is why controlling the frame matters more than being right. When you define meaning, you control how others feel about the situation. You shape the emotion that dictates the conclusion. Machiavelli also knew that silence could frame reality even more powerfully than words. Sometimes, not responding allows others to fill the gap with their own interpretations. Interpretations that often favor your power. The less you say, the more people project. And those projections, once formed, are nearly impossible to erase. You become a mirror, reflecting what others want to see, yet never revealing what's real. That's frame control in its purest form, invisible domination. In power dynamics, the goal isn't to convince, it's to command belief. Convincing relies on facts, commanding relies on frames. A general doesn't argue why his plan is perfect, he declares, "This is the only way." A ruler doesn't ask for loyalty, he defines loyalty as alignment with his vision. Machiavelli understood this: whoever names the meaning owns the minds of men. You can see this everywhere. In politics, in media, in business, even in relationships. The one who defines what the conversation means holds the leash. The one who tries to prove the truth is already captured. When someone challenges you, don't fall into their frame. Shift it. They call you selfish. You call it self-respect. They call you distant. You call it focus. They call you lucky. You call it earned. Every accusation is an opportunity to redefine power. Because the truth is, people remember how they felt about what you said, not what you actually said. The strong know this and use it. The weak cling to facts, thinking truth will save them. But truth alone is powerless without the right frame to hold it. Machiavelli's lesson is cold, but liberating. Control perception, and you control destiny. If you lose control of the frame, even the truth becomes useless. If you master it, even lies can become legend. There is a power stronger than explanation, stronger than proof, stronger even than truth itself, and that is mystery. Machiavelli understood that men are fascinated not by what they know, but by what they can't quite understand. The unknown commands attention, the uncertain inspires figure, and the mysterious figure, the one who doesn't explain, who doesn't reveal, who doesn't justify. That person becomes larger than life. When you remove mystery from yourself, you become predictable, ordinary, safe. But when you withhold, when you speak less, when you let people guess, something strange happens. They start to imagine. They fill in the blanks with their own thoughts, their own fears, their own admiration. And in that moment, you control their imagination without saying a word. Machiavelli observed that the most powerful leaders never showed their full hand. They let others wonder what they were thinking. Their silence wasn't ignorance. It was a trap. It made their opponents overthink, doubt, and weaken themselves through uncertainty. The less you reveal, the more powerful you appear. Because people can't attack what they can't define. Let's make this real. Think of someone in your life who rarely talks about their plans, who doesn't explain every decision. People say they're hard to read. But notice how that phrase always comes with a mix of respect and fear. Hard to read means hard to manipulate. It means they hold the cards, and no one knows what's coming next. That's Machiavellian mystery. In politics, in business, in power, the same rule applies. The ruler who always explains every move looks desperate to be understood. The mysterious one looks confident, untouchable. When Machiavelli studied princes and kings, he saw that those who explained too much invited revolt. Because when people think they fully know you, they also think they can predict you. And what can be predicted can be controlled. Mystery breaks that illusion. It keeps everyone slightly off balance, slightly in awe. And that tension, that uncertainty, becomes your shield. Imagine walking into a room and not rushing to fill the silence. You say little, but when you do, every word feels heavy. People lean in, waiting. The less you give them, the more they want. That is psychological leverage. The art of creating gravity through restraint. The mysterious person doesn't seek approval. They create anticipation. This is why Machiavelli often favored appearing unpredictable over being loved. He knew that love fades when familiarity grows, but fascination lasts as long as the mystery remains. When people think they've figured you out, they stop watching. When they never quite can, they can't look away. Mystery is also protection. Every time you explain yourself, you give away information. You reveal your fears, your boundaries, your weaknesses. The more people know, the more they can use against you. But when you stay quiet, when your motives are hidden, you deny them the tools to strike. You make them guess in the dark, and in that guessing, they make mistakes. Machiavelli would say that a prince must be seen, but never fully understood. Appear enough to be remembered, but never enough to be predictable. A mysterious ruler can be loved or feared, but he will always be respected. The same principle applies to you. Whether you lead a team, run a business, or simply move through social circles, mystery elevates you. It creates an invisible barrier that others hesitate to cross. And mystery doesn't mean silence alone. It means control of revelation. It means revealing only what strengthens your image, never what weakens it. Say less than you know. Share less than you feel. Let people sense depth they can't measure. Let them wonder how much more there is behind your calm expression. In their curiosity, you build authority. People think vulnerability earns trust, and sometimes it does. But in the game of power, excessive openness kills intrigue. Machiavelli knew that trust built on mystery lasts longer than trust built on confession. Because mystery feeds imagination, and imagination is more powerful than any truth you can offer. Even in conflict, mystery disarms your enemies. When they can't predict how you'll respond, they hesitate. When they hesitate, you move first. Your unpredictability becomes a psychological weapon, a fog that blinds their strategy. Every great tactician, from emperors to CEOs, has used this law. Never be fully seen. Never be fully known. People will gossip, speculate, whisper. Let them. Each rumor adds to your legend. Each unanswered question becomes another brick in the wall of your power. Because humans hate uncertainty, but they respect it. They talk about what they don't understand. They fear what they can't read. Mystery isn't deception, it's direction. You're not hiding who you are. You're guiding what others think you are. You're shaping perception through silence, letting imagination do the heavy lifting. The loud man is forgotten. The mysterious man is remembered. In your daily life, this could be as simple as resisting the urge to explain every choice, every move. You don't need to justify your plans to anyone. Let your results speak. Let your silence speak louder. When someone demands an answer, sometimes the most powerful reply is no reply at all. The unknown forces respect where words would only invite argument. Machiavelli once hinted that power grows in the shadows, that what is unseen carries more influence than what is spoken. The truly powerful man is not the one who's known by all, but the one whose thoughts remain a mystery to everyone. And that mystery, that calm invisibility behind every action, is what makes others watch, wait, and wonder who you really are. Every powerful figure in history has faced criticism. But the difference between those who crumble and those who rise lies in how they respond to it. The weak defend, the strong transform. Machiavelli knew that criticism isn't something to hide from, it's something to use. He believed that every accusation, every insult, every whisper of disapproval can be turned into fuel for power, if you know how to reframe it. When people criticize you, what they're really doing is giving you attention. They're acknowledging your presence, your influence, your disruption of the ordinary. Most people fear criticism because they mistake it for rejection. But Machiavelli saw it differently. He saw it as a signal, proof that your actions have been noticed. To be criticized is to matter, and to matter is to hold power. So, what does the Machiavellian mind do when attacked? It doesn't react emotionally. It doesn't defend or explain. It flips the criticism into a mirror that reflects authority. Someone calls you arrogant. You say, "Only those who doubt themselves fear confidence." They say you're ruthless. You answer, "Weakness never built empires." They say you're cold. You smile and say, "I prefer clarity to chaos." You don't deny their words. You turn them into declarations of strength. Machiavelli understood that people judge based on tone, not truth. If you respond to criticism with offense or insecurity, you validate the critic's frame. But if you meet it with calm indifference or even a slight smirk, you shift the energy entirely. You send a message that you are untouchable, that their opinion doesn't pierce your armor. And the moment people realize their words cannot wound you, their attacks lose value. There's an art to this. The art of redirection. The art of using the opponent's force against them. A concept not only Machiavellian, but universal to every power strategy in history. When someone tries to cut you down, don't swing back, let their words hang in the air. Let silence stretch. The more they expect you to react, the more your stillness unsettles them. They reveal emotion. You reveal control. And control is the currency of power. In The Prince, Machiavelli warned rulers never to appear defensive because defense creates doubt. Instead, he advised them to act as though every accusation was beneath their notice. Or better yet, to twist it into proof of their effectiveness. The strong prince would say, "If they call me cruel, it's because they fear me, and fear keeps order." With one sentence, he turns condemnation into justification. The attack becomes validation. This same law applies in modern life. At work, someone calls you too ambitious. Don't defend it. Nod, smile slightly, and say, "Ambition builds progress." Someone says you're controlling. You reply, "Leadership requires direction." Each time, you reframe the insult as evidence of value. You don't resist their attack. You redirect it toward your power. Criticism thrives on reaction. It needs emotion to survive. When you respond with calmness, you starve it. When you reframe it with confidence, you reverse it. The critic wanted to weaken you, but instead, they end up strengthening your image. This is the psychological flip, turning opposition into authority. Machiavelli knew that people secretly admire what they claim to hate. They condemn arrogance but bow to confidence. They mock power but crave to follow it. So when someone tries to shame you, understand. Their criticism often hides envy. Their insult is proof that you represent something they cannot control. The trick is never to argue facts. Arguments make you equal to your critic, and equality is not power. Instead, rise above. Use tone, silence, and irony to make them look small. A calm smile in the face of criticism communicates a truth stronger than any words. "You cannot touch me." That message lingers long after the conversation ends. Sometimes laughter is the sharpest response. When a powerful person laughs off an attack, the room shifts. The critic loses seriousness, the tension dissolves, and suddenly the target of the insult looks stronger, freer, almost superior. Machiavelli would call this the laughter of the lion. The confidence that disarms enemies without a single drop of blood. It's not about pretending criticism doesn't exist. It's about mastering the art of using it. Every time someone throws a stone, you build another step upward. Their attacks become your materials. The higher you rise, the smaller they appear. Because the one who turns attacks into armor cannot be destroyed, only refined. Machiavelli believed that power doesn't just come from dominance. It comes from emotional mastery. The ability to remain unmoved while others try to provoke you is the mark of a ruler. When you don't defend, you imply you have nothing to fear. When you don't explain, you imply your position is self-evident. That quiet certainty radiates strength, and strength silences critics more effectively than argument ever could. Criticism, then, becomes a stage, and you are the actor who decides the tone of the play. You can choose to play the victim, or you can play the leader who smiles while the crowd shouts. One demands sympathy, the other commands respect. The crowd always ends up following the one who doesn't need their approval. Machiavelli would remind us that the world doesn't respect perfection. It respects resilience. People admire those who absorb criticism without flinching, who use it as fire to harden their image. Each accusation, each rumor, each insult, its energy. And energy can always be redirected. The art of flipping criticism isn't about winning arguments. It's about transforming perception. It's about showing the world that even in attack, you remain the one in control. Power is never given. It's shaped. It's molded through perception, through silence, through the way you carry yourself when the world tests you. Machiavelli understood that true strength doesn't come from defending, proving, or pleasing. It comes from commanding the frame of reality itself. When you refuse to defend yourself, you send a message that you are above judgment. When you control the frame, you decide what the truth means. When you use mystery as your armor, you turn uncertainty into authority. And when you flip criticism into fuel, you transform weakness into dominance. This is the Machiavellian art, not of deception, but of mastery. Mastery over emotion, mastery over reaction, mastery over how others perceive you. The world doesn't reward those who are right. It rewards those who appear unshakable. So the next time someone questions your worth, doubts your choices, or challenges your power, remember this: you owe them no explanation. You owe them only the sight of your composure. Because in silence, in restraint, and in confidence lies the purest form of control. Power is not in defending yourself, it's in never needing to.